Foxhole wars are too long. That is what we are here to discuss today. I'm your host, Lek. Welcome to Trench Talk. Here with me today to discuss this pressing matter is Robertlovesgames. Robert, can you give me an introduction? Who are you, and why are you here to discuss this with me?
Hello, all. My name's Robert Loves Games, and you can always just call me Robert. I have some people call Mr. Loves Games or Robert and then Space Loves Games, but Robert's just fine, or Rob, anything along
Probably
those
going to
lines.
default to Rob a little bit here.
Yep, fair enough. Feel free to do so. And I've been playing Foxhole probably since about War 74-ish. I think around Entrenched or right before Entrenched. I just saw a random streamer playing it, and I actually thought it was an RTS game at first. And then I saw actual players running around.
This was around the time of the French invasion, I think, right? Or was that slightly later? No, that would have been...
Yeah, I want to say it was right before Entrenched, I know. Somewhere around there.
Entrenched was 83. Winter Army was, I think, 71, so yeah. And the French invasion was just after Winter Army, so that sounds like the French invasion.
Okay, so around there. I watched a small streamer play, and yeah, I loved the logistics side, so I jumped in.
Robert is here with me today because Doter, shout out to Doter for being an annoying fuck and constantly telling me to bring this back, but he did give me, he specifically recommended to talk to you, so you know what? Here we are. I hope, Doter, I hope you're happy. Fuck you. No, so, what we're gonna talk about is, as I said in the opening, Foxhole wars are too long. I haven't actually discussed this with Rob ahead of time, so we're going to get his opinion on the matter before we get into mine. Rob, what is your opinion? Do you think Foxhole wars are in fact too long?
My overarching answer is no. Foxhole wars are not too long, but there is plenty of asterisks that I can put in there. I am always of the mindset that I would love a forever war. I would love the longest war possible. But again, I have a lot of asterisks in there on why I think that and why... There are certain aspects of the game that need to be changed for certain roles within Foxhole to make those wars, those longer wars, better to prevent burnout.
Okay, thank fuck you said that, because this would have been real boring if you had said yes, because I completely disagree. Well, not completely. Okay. Here's the thing. I disagree with that, or I support the idea that Foxhole wars are too long, but I also have a million asterisks. So how about we get into, what is your, To start off where my contention is that I don't think wars are inherently too long. Okay. I think my favorite war in recent time was War 100. How did you enjoy that one? How much have you played that one and the wars since then?
Yeah, War 100 has probably got to be in one of my top favorite wars for sure. I don't have any stats pulled up or anything right now. I should have done that, but yeah, that was 55 days, the longest war still?
Yep.
Is that correct? Yep.
Yeah, 55 days, yeah.
Yeah, so one of the reasons that I just inherently like longer wars is because obviously we get further in tech, right? A lot more is available to players in terms of vehicles and weaponry and basically everything the game has to offer. So it's easier for casual players to jump in. I always suggest mid to late war because then they have all of these weapons and items available to them. You have a lot of new players sometimes joining the early war and saying, where are the tanks? Where are these battleships? Where are all these fun things that I can use? And they're not there. So then they get kind of discouraged from playing the game because then they learn, oh, my favorite thing doesn't come out for a while, or I have to work really hard in the beginning here to get my favorite tank or my favorite item to use.
Yeah, now, what I'd say to that is, I think I agree with you on the you don't get any of the cool shit early war. But I don't think that, I think that there's also a counterpoint that could be made that would be, hey, early war is where things are simpler. If you're a new player, you're not overwhelmed. If you're just hopping in. I would agree with you, though, that early game is boring as fuck, and there's none of the, big fun stuff. However, I'd also get into, this is a whole concept, talk about PvE and the way the tech tree is structured. But to just keep it focused on the central question, real quick, I want to ask you, what do you why do you believe that because for the tech tree and everything like that, the tech tree is pretty much done after 3 weeks, and so your ideal war is towards that. Just give me a ballpark number, 7 weeks, 8 weeks?
25 days is my, okay, this war has been great. It can end at any time, and I'm happy. If it goes below 25, I think that's too short.
Okay, right. So, that is a lot lower than I thought you would say.
Uh-huh.
I will say, what you specifically just said there is my exact problem with Foxhole at the moment.
Okay.
Is that I think the issue isn't that the wars are long. Like I said, 100 was my favorite, even though that one was 55 days long. My issue is more so that I feel like the Foxhole wars are artificially long. I feel like the major issue is that the balance between structures and PvE and player power and all of that, all of those factors, all of the war slowdown, anti-snowball mechanics, I think they have created an environment where you're disincentivized to actually play the game for the first 3-ish weeks. And that, to me, fundamentally makes it feel as though to me, it's not really a question of how long wars actually last, but really a question of, am I able to meaningfully sway the needle towards victory or defeat at any point in the war? And I think that because the answer is no towards that earlier point, that's why I dislike the current state of war length. I don't know, to like frame this a little bit as a question, sorry.
Yes. Yep.
You started playing right at the perfect point to experience the old system or old average war length compared to the newer average war length.
Correct. I had a few wars that were probably less than 18 days. I feel like I played a handful of, less than 18-day wars.
Yeah, so the major difference I would ask you to say is, would you compare all of the pre 1.0 wars and then looking at those and then compare those against the post update 52, aka War 102? How would you say those are equally as good in terms of the game, or what do you think about the current war length on average being about 35 to 40 odd days over the past year versus those earlier wars being closer to 20, 25?
Yeah, so to kind of go back to your point, I think you're exactly right, if I'm understanding this right. There's a lot more prep time, right, in the early war, where you're saying it's just a lot more prep. You're not able to take as many, bases or hexes even, within the first 2 weeks of the war, unless one side is just being crazy on one side of the map, right? Which then people start to yell out break war and all of these things like nobody's playing. But you're exactly right, and a lot of the beginning of the war now after 1.0 is a lot more prep. We're prepping facilities, we're prepping for building battle tanks, or now, with the Navy update, we're prepping to build big battleships and things like that. So a lot more people are building these giant facilities and bases to prep for that higher tech. And the needle isn't moving as much because more players are focusing on that prep. So I look at it. I used to play a lot of StarCraft 2 back in the day.
Yeah.
And I used to cast tournaments and stuff for it, which I really enjoyed. But I always kind of refer to it as that, where it's if you're playing the big macro game, you're prepping to build 2 to 3 bases. You're expanding. You want to get your army supply up to 200 before you send that final push out to attack your enemy, and then that snowball happens where you win that first major battle, and then you start to take out their expansions and their bases and things, and then the needle moves a little bit faster, which I think I really enjoy that prep aspect. And this is coming from a logistics player. Like I mentioned earlier, I joined Foxhole because of logistics, so I like that build up, building supplies, building up bases for defenses, and then having there be major battles at the end, right?
Yeah, I wanna dig into that specifically because I have a contention there that I don't think that's how Foxhole Wars actually play out, or rather, I don't think that it is a I don't think the example you gave of StarCraft 2 is necessarily compatible within Foxhole, because I think a lot of Foxhole players are specialists. I don't think many players do every single role in this game. The game is, frankly, it's too big and there's too many systems for you to master every single system and play every single system with an equal level investment and still have your sanity, right? So I think the issue that I have is that you have all this build-up,
Uh-huh.
But that buildup realistically means that unless you're like logistics, and I'm not even talking frontline logistics, I'm talking
Uh-huh.
exclusively stockpiling like raw, like or intermediate materials like explosives and
Uh-huh.
BMATs and shirts and weapons and like like the early game explosives that still last into the late game, like RPG shells, like Tremola, or you're just stockpiling 40 mil, all this stuff that's going to be actually relevant in the late game, or you're building concrete. I feel like those are the only two roles currently that really actually feel tangibly rewarding to play
Uh-huh.
for the first 3 weeks. I don't
Uh-huh.
think, because to go back to the StarCraft equation, if you're a macro player and
Uh-huh.
you're making the conscious decision to expand your base, you are actively giving up the development of your army, right? However,
Correct. Yep.
in Foxhole, that's not really how the Foxhole economy is structured. Right from day one, you pretty much operate at maximum like output. The only significant changes that occur are like tech locked, and those techs unlock at the same time, relatively speaking, to your opponent. And because so much of the war takes place in late game where your logistics isn't really improving, the only meaningful build-up that you can actually do is your rail lines, but you don't really get benefit beyond just having a connection. I feels like when you talk about the actual build-up, that doesn't feel like that's actually how that plays out, and it feels
Okay.
more like that's what I'm trying to get at, is that there's
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think what you could tell me if I'm wrong here. Are you pretty familiar with StarCraft at all?
Yeah,
Okay.
I haven't played it, but
That's okay. Yeah, I haven't played for a while
yeah,
either.
but
it sounds
before
like what you,
before we
it
started
sounds like-
recording, do you remember I mentioned that one RTS streamer or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually like plays a lot of StarCraft, and I used to watch a lot of competitive StarCraft a few years ago.
Yeah. So it sounds like this is what it sounds like to me. What you would want more in the game, and again, tell me if I'm wrong here, but you want some mechanic in the game, possibly that people could six pool right at the beginning. Something that they could make a difference at the beginning and take a little bit more risk and do a little bit more damage in the beginning. It would cut your logi a little bit because you're focusing on building this specific item, explosion, or tool. To six pool, to do a faster assault and not focus on the macro so much.
Something to that effect, yes. The problem that I have is that there's no decision to be made of macro versus like aggression.
Right.
Like there's not an opportunity cost that is paid by trying to attack the enemy, because your logistics, like I said, it's
Right.
already maxed out. There's
Which I
no
think there should be.
Yeah.
I actually had this thought the other day that somebody made a comment in one of my videos that gave me this idea, and I don't know how it would work out. I haven't thought it thoroughly through or in depth or anything, but that essentially we have these different tier systems of tech that kind of unlock, and I'm just going to use the example of like a tier 1, a tier 2, a tier 3, each thing unlocking, but what we need in between is more of a 0.5, right? You need something that's like in the middle that's going to be trumped by the next tier, but that still does some sort of significant damage in between. Does that kind of make sense?
You wish the power curve of the tech tree was smoother, where it's very jumpy.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, I don't think I would say I don't think that's my issue with it. I think my specific issue is that the tech tree, as it exists right now, exclusively impacts offense. It has no impact aside from like facilities and like trains. There's very little impacted like on the logistical end, aside from I get to make more like weapons,
Right.
or
Right. Or I get a hammer, or I get a harvester after a couple days. Right. I'm with you. I agree with
you
that
get
point.
like 3 to 4 major unlocks
Yes,
as
right.
logistics, and that's it. And then it's even worse on bunkers, because your tech system as a bunker player is completely separate from from the offensive crew. So if you want to make the strongest possible bunker, you can do that after just like 5 to 7 days. Whereas in order for someone to get all of the best equipment, they just artificially have to wait 3 weeks, right?
Right.
And then the bad part is that once you get to that late game, okay, well, what if I want to build a bunker now? You still have to wait that 5 to 7 day period, but the enemy just already has all their late game stuff. They don't have to make any trade-offs of okay, well, I'm going to do
Right.
bunkers or I'm going to do this. There's no...
Which I was
yeah.
tricked. I was tricked at one point. I tricked myself. I should know. But when the advanced construction vehicle came out, right? I looked at it right away. I'm like, oh, we're gonna be able to build faster. We're gonna be able to build bunkers faster.
You
You know, like
naive fool.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I immediately thought that, and then it didn't happen, and then it immediately made me think of like, why don't we have something like that as as the war progresses? Why aren't there those tools that give the builders something a little bit more accessible and easier to refortify areas or reinforce areas, so it doesn't snowball from, oh, now we have all this high-tech offensive weapons that are just going to blow through our defenses that can't be done within 5 to 7 days, you know?
Yeah, this sort of... I had mentioned earlier anti-snowballing stuff, and this relates to the bunker stuff of you want to build the best bunker possible. It takes, I'm not a builder, so I don't know the exact discrepancy, but I believe it takes an extra, like, 2 to 3, maybe more days to build a perfect bunker in enemy territory versus friendly territory. Like, the amount of extra time you have to spend waiting on tech is quite significant. Like, if you want to get an intel bunker, or like an intel center or a storm cannon in friendly territory, you're going to be waiting around 8 to 9 days, right?
Yeah.
If you want to do that in enemy territory, you're looking at maybe longer than 2 weeks, right? It's just one of those things of, that's like another mechanic that it doesn't feel correct that's how that works, where
I agree with you. I agree with you. I think something needs to be changed in that line, and I don't know if it's. I've kind of just stared, vaguely at the voting system of bunkers and things like that. Is that the right way to move up those tech trees within defenses? Like, you have to have people literally AFK their accounts on their bunker base just to have the voting on and to like have that tech grow. Is that the correct way to do that?
Yeah, this is sort of what I mean when I get back to the central question of, are Foxhole wars too long? I don't think the issue has to do with war length. I think the issue has to do with all of the little artificial mechanics of the game. And you could say, well, what's artificial? It's all a game. It's not like a reflection of real life, and it's not realistic, and it's all this stuff, right? And what would you call artificial versus not? And I think in this specific case, I call certain things like the bunker tech, I don't think bunker tech is necessarily artificial, but the way it works with the friendly or enemy starting region, that to me feels incredibly artificial, because it is entirely out of the hands of players, right? It is one of those mechanics that is specifically designed to prevent snowballing, right? And and you have mechanics like that, or you have mechanics like the spawn timer, right? And both of those mechanics, they're designed in such a way where they're much more impactful earlier in the war, but later in the war, they're just significantly less impactful. Have you being a slightly, well, I don't, you say you're pretty casual, right?
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty casual.
Okay. What is your understanding about how spawn timers as a balancing mechanism impacts the game? Like, how do you see it slowing down the game?
There was a great Reddit video today. I don't know if you saw it, but somebody compared the 55-second timer.
Yeah, that was Kane.
I thought that was interesting, and that made me think a lot too. And I've always looked at the spawn timer as something, again, that needs to be tweaked or changed. I'm always in the mindset of like, oh, I wish the devs would just change it completely just to try something new, right? Like, I wish they would just make it a set 30-second spawner timer, or don't base it off population of how many wardens or how many colonials are in the hex or anything along those lines. I think all of that just needs to be revisited and looked at again, but I just don't know how specifically to do that. I don't know. I don't have a good way to word it or to develop it. On my own.
I think I'm not necessarily asking you to have all of the ideas here. Don't worry. Hey, if you had ideas, I'd be willing to explore them. But
no, I can always shoot out random ideas. I don't know if they're going to be good or not.
Hey, you know what? I got my own ideas. I think I'm a decent judge of if an idea is good, because I know how to run it down. But at the very least, in this case, there's a question of like if you just totally axe this spawn timer and everyone is a flat. Let's say it's like still individual based. Where are you familiar with? I could be. This is one of those moments where Foxhole gaslights you, so you don't actually know if what you're talking about is real or not. But I'm pretty sure the way that Foxhole spawn timer works is a product of three things: how recently you've died, the total global population as a rolling average, and it might also have to do with hex pop, but I'm pretty sure it's mostly just those first two.
Okay, I thought it was the other two, the how recent you've died, and then the hex pop. That would have been my guess with spawn timers.
Because the primary reason that you'll see 50-second spawn timers is because of the global rolling average, like balancing mechanism. Yes. Okay, and then the other thing, usually the how often you're dying only impacts it by a matter of within a band of about 5 to 20 seconds, difference. Like, if you're dying a lot, you might go from, 0-second spawn to, 20-second spawn. But on average, it's only going to increase your spawn time by about 5 to 10 seconds, right? Okay. And on the higher end, if your faction is at max pop and the enemy has no one, it's basically going to be completely irrelevant compared to, everyone is going to be dealing with 55 to a minute spawn timer anyway, yeah?
Right. I should say I have about 1,000 hours in this game, a little over now, and I would say maybe 100 of those are on the front line. I'm 900 hours in the back to midline, doing logistics.
Oh, I just remembered. Complete non sequitur. This is one of the other videos I had seen of yours, and it's the one where you were rebuilding a conch core as it's getting shot by a battleship.
Oh no!
Yeah. Do you know why I saw that one? I was the battleship.
Oh, you were on the battleship.
Actually, I don't think I was on that specific battleship, but that was the war that we were doing daily double battleship ops on Morgan's. So
it was Morgan's Crossing. Yeah. Yep.
If you noticed any of that conch getting destroyed, chances are it was our battleship.
Yes.
And you might have noticed that. Oh, actually, we'll get into Naval in a little bit. For now, the focus. I still want to give us a little bit more time with the initial premise before we get on to Naval. But just to wrap things up. In terms of artificial mechanics and such, like I said, I think the bunker tech system maybe that could be tied more to the tech tree. Maybe there's late game tech that makes it faster to build. Maybe as a result, I think the solution to the feeling of wars being artificially long is a matter of changing the way that bunker tech works. Changing the way that the spawn timers work. Maybe I think it's good to have some level of balancing. I just think that anything beyond 30 seconds just fundamentally alters how the game is played too drastically and it kills the fun for most of the war.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
I had asked you this question about if you do you understand how spawn timers impact various roles in Foxhole and where it is the most and where it is the least detrimental? This was a small question because I want to.
Are you talking about in terms of combat and things and
mostly primarily combat because well actually just as a global thing, how does it impact the war broadly?
Yeah. So, my limited time on the front and everything, it's just going to impact those big pushes, those big operations, right? Is that what we're kind of getting at with this question a little bit?
A little bit, but I'm even talking more broadly, every single tool in the game type of broad. Every single role, every single tool, how does gameplay change in every single role in your eyes when the spawn timer is 0 versus 60 seconds?
You're just going to base you're going to base what you're going to do as a player based off of that spawn timer, right? What actions
keep in mind,
you're going to take.
Keep in
do
mind,
I want to go rush to the front and grab a rifle and die every 60 seconds, or do I want to try and do something more significant with my life?
Here's the thing. Remember what I said earlier about specialization. Most players, even if there is a 60-second spawn timer, if you're not a Logi player, the chances that you go and start doing Logi under that spawn timer are kind of low.
They are, and I want to change that fundamental culture within this game. If I ever can do something with Foxhole, is that you need to play more than one role if you want to enjoy this game.
Well, you can
I'm just gonna
play.
say it.
I'll say this: I play a lot of different roles in this
I
game.
do too. I
Yep,
do too.
I do Logi, I do frontline, arty, tanks,
Yeah.
naval. Like, the one thing I don't do is build, but
Yes.
I talk to a fair amount of like builders to try and get their insight on things. But I don't think you're going to be able to change player behavior from trying. Like, players are going to do what is fun for them.
Exactly.
And,
And I'm trying to teach them if
yeah.
they play more roles, they'll have more fun.
I don't think that's necessarily the case for every player, and I don't think that's the answer. But the reason I was asking the question about spawn timers, I was trying to like see if you because the answer I would give for that question is essentially the answer I would give is that logistics is entirely unimpacted, building is entirely unimpacted.
Correct. Yeah.
The only role that's actually significantly impacted generally is infantry and artillery, right? Because as infantry, you're going to be dying a lot. As artillery, if the enemy gets a counter battery up, but they have a significant spawn timer advantage, and there's wind plays a bigger role in this than spawn timers, but if wind is neutral and both of you are able to hit each other with artillery, and one faction has 60-second spawn timers versus the other's instant, you fundamentally cannot do arty there, because you have no manpower to do anything.
Correct.
But do you know why that spawn timer balancing is so much less impactful in late game? It's because what is late game defined by? Tanks, SPGs, railway storm cannons. All things that completely circumvent the spawn timer by taking the destruction of bunkers and moving it out of combat.
Yeah.
That is
like the example of Morgan's Crossing, essentially, that we had. You know, you all focused that bunker down, and like there was just no option to spawn at that forward bunker anymore, so we couldn't do anything. So spawn times had nothing to do with that.
Well, it's not even that. It's more so the case that, like, if you tried to do... If you're on like a frontline push with... Well, against concrete, if you're having a frontline push, the chances that you actually kill that concrete are kind of slim. Basically, all concrete these days dies during low pop, because you just... There's no tools to actually do it during high pop, unless you're talking about, like, a railway storm cannon, or you have several, like, dozen, like, ballistas to throw away, or you have SPGs, right? There's like the narrowness of the ways that you can actually kill concrete are kind of slim, and specifically in terms of the battleship thing, it's sort of the same thing, because if you're on a battleship, you're not gonna die. Like, if you're crewing the battleship, you're not dying. You don't have to deal with a 60-second spawn timer. You have to deal with the spawn timer of your battleship, which is, if it dies, another, like, 10 hours of construction. And plus all the time getting the shells, plus all the time restockpiling it, plus all the time bringing it back to port, plus, like, there's so much more impactful time than the death that you're not going to experience as a crew. And and it's like, when you think about it like that's the reason why I don't like how, like, the spawn timer system works and how the, like, bunker tech works, is because all of it basically works in such a way where until you are at end game tech, you will have a difficult time dealing with anything, and because only in late game does the game let you, not because tanks are more powerful than infantry inherently, they kind of are, but, like, the main reason why is because tanks, when they die, going to get another tank only takes 5 minutes. Whether your spawn timer is 0 seconds or 60 seconds, the difference is basically non-existent for getting a new tank, right? I'm sorry if I talked a lot.
No, this is great. This is good. This is good insight that I will tell you that I probably haven't thought about enough.
Okay.
Honestly.
Hey, you know what? That's fair. I'm just, I'm slightly... I am a fucking nerd for this game. Like,
no, I love it. I'm a nerd
highest,
for it too, so this is good, yeah.
Yeah, to a really stupid degree. But that's, like, that's what I mean by when I say wars are artificial. They don't feel... The issue I have, I actually stopped playing after 102 because of the satchel change, because it was literally a case of, hey, infantry can't play the game anymore. The only way for you to destroy bunkers is with artillery and tanks, except artillery kind of sucked at the time because now they've done the Howie integrity nerf, which has made it a little bit easier. It's still, like, you basically can only still do it with if you have, like, a dedicated clan bringing up SPGs. Otherwise, the, like, randoms can't really do much against bunkers still. But,
Right,
yeah.
right. I think most of the Foxhole community right now would be in agreement that infantry needs a buff in some sense, right? We need some sort of quality of life or infantry buff where they can do a little bit more and we don't have to necessarily rely solely on the tanks or the Tempest cannons or things along those lines.
Yeah, because I have this one builder friend of mine who's specifically said that they did not like the satchel removal, specifically because it made builder skills so much less impactful. Because now, instead of having to plan around infantry, tanks, and artillery, all you're planning around is just like just ballista or chieftain rushes, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So. That's that. I feel like that's mostly covered. Like, do you have any other thoughts on, like, before we move on to naval or about
again with war
length?
length? I like where they're at in terms of like I like the 30-day range and things like that. I think what I hope that the devs focus on here soon, and who knows if they're going to do that because it's not the flashy thing to focus on, is a quality of life increase in infantry and builders in tandem. I think we need both to happen at the same time because I know a lot of builders that are burnt out of rebuilding concrete bases. You know, we get to the late war and they don't want to build their bunker base for the third time or, you know, wait those days and do all of that. So
one of the big
there's a lot there.
This is actually going to give me an opportunity to talk even longer. Thank you. What I was going to say is something people often think about is about like rebuilding. Most builders that I talk to, they usually complain about the MSUP upkeep, not necessarily rebuilding, right? Mm-hmm. My major issue is that for every concrete bunker that gets rebuilt, that is another, like, however many players you need to be doing logistics and offensive work to, like, kill it again, right? When you only need a few builders to build a bunker, but you need a lot more to actually kill it. But ignoring that, in terms of you'd said, what was the beginning of your statement? It had to do with, right. I don't think that every Foxhole war needs to be 30 days long.
Okay.
I think, to me personally, I think the reason that I really liked War 100, despite it being 55 days, is because not every war needs to be long. I think, like, it's sort of a case of, if every single war is within this same amount of length, it starts to feel like artificial, where the game mechanics don't let you be, like, to use a saying, it's Foxhole persistent warfare, not permanent warfare, which you might disagree with because it sounded like you wanted a permanent war, right?
Forever war.
Yeah. No, me personally,
no.
Yeah, it's like if the enemy isn't playing, you should win, right?
Right.
And if one faction is winning a lot, and really quickly, that might be a sign that, okay, maybe then the player population will settle itself out and things will get better. Or if it doesn't, maybe you have an underlying balance concern. I think the issue that I have right now with it is, like I said, it feels artificial, but it also hides potential, like, balance concerns or morale concerns or population concerns. And it burns people out knowing that, hey, if you want to win, you have to go really hard, and it's not going to end for a long time. Most people would rather just log in when it's relevant, which kind of just means that players don't play Foxhole. You win by not playing the game.
Right. Foxhole, it's an interesting game in our times because you look at other games and every other game right now gives you everything that you want within a pretty limited, like a really small amount of time. So, like, people get Foxhole and then you learn that, oh, this is, like, really long. This is, like, 20, 25 plus days. I have to do all of these prep actions. I have to do all of this work. Like, I literally call it work most of the time. A lot of people call it work, which a lot of gamers don't like the sound of that. It's like, I'm not trying to get on to do work, and I'm trying to have fun, right?
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, there's people that have specialization. I know people that log on just when tanks, get teched, right? They don't touch Foxhole until tanks are teched, and then they get on, and then they'll play tanks, right?
Yeah, I think for me, that for me is right now is me with Naval. Is what I will say. Yeah,
That you
like
don't get on until Navy is updated
I
or
mean,
out.
at the moment, I have so many other games and so little
Uh-huh.
free time. It's
Yes.
like
Uh-huh.
there's if I'm playing Foxhole, it's gonna be the one thing that I've had fun with in the past
And I
year.
think that's completely fair. And it's fortunately and unfortunately the way the game is built though, right? It's the way, which I love the overall nature of that, right? And not a lot of players do. They don't like that. They don't like that they have to wait for those things or that they have to work to build those things.
I think my issue with Foxhole isn't that like you have that. My issue is that they've sort of removed the lower end.
Uh-huh.
Like you can't really have fun on the lower investment level of Foxhole right now. The if you want
Right.
to if you
Right.
want to do anything fun, you have to
Right.
spend so much time and sanity on Foxhole.
Which is why I think they need those halfway tiers, which is I kind of mentioned before, those point
Well,
fives.
I
And
don't
I
even.
think those need to be obtainable by small groups. They need to be obtainable by groups of 5 people max, essentially.
I don't
There needs
even when you say tiers, I don't think. Do you mean that only in a tech sense? Because I would say that's
okay.
more applicable in a content sense, where
Yeah.
stuff like old satchels were what I would refer to as that.
Here's
Because
an example
yeah,
I'll try and give, which I don't know if this will be a good one either, but maybe you can build off of it and see what I'm trying to say. So it's like gunboats, right? There's the gunboats that
oh,
unlock. That's like the first navy, and then
if you
after
wanna,
that, it's like the big gap is up until destroyers. Like,
yeah, no,
why isn't
if
there
you were,
something in between?
this is a perfect segue because I was gonna say my major issue with Naval right now is that there's a massive content gap where it just goes instantly to the discrepancy. I really like the way Naval plays. I
Uh-huh.
don't like the Naval content. If that
Okay.
makes any sense. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
mechanically, in terms of the gameplay, this has been the most fun I've had in Foxhole since the Dark Ages began with Update 52.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like killing battleships with gunboats and like killing massive amounts of gunboats with battleships or killing battleships with battleships or killing a nuke with a battleship. Like I've done all of this and it is so much fun. Like when you play with people who know what they're doing with Naval, when you play with people who don't want to just like throw away like 10 battleships because they have an ego problem, you know who I'm talking about. You know who I'm talking about if you're watching this. I'm not going to say his name. You know who I'm talking about. Fuck him. I hate him on a personal level. This is my call out post where I'm not going to name him. Anyway, I'm sorry. The spite is overwhelming. No. What do you have any ideas though for the like halfway tiers of? Because I would say like stuff like Corvettes, right? Like
Right, exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That was my kind of that's my point five. That's what I'm trying to convey when I say point five, is that kind of in between, right? And I'm saying that like land kind of has that a little bit with the light tanks. Like it kind of builds up gradually and everything, but
Yeah, where it's light tank, medium tank, battle tank, super heavy.
yeah, but it's like maybe there even has to be something in between that, like a little
Yeah.
bit. Like I don't, you know.
Maybe like heavy tanks between. Well, battle tanks are kind of already like the
Yeah,
perfect.
yeah, that
Battle tanks are kind of the perfect thing with that. I feel like super
yes.
heavies are a little iffy.
Yes,
anything.
yes. I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, Corvettes are a really good idea. Something in between. I'm not a Navy expert or like I'm not somebody in this game that has studied World War One or World War
Oh no no no
II or
no!
anything.
Something you'll notice very quickly if you play Foxhole in any serious capacity is that when you study Foxhole, you think in a military mindset, not in a military application. You do not think of Foxhole like, oh hey, I'm gonna play Foxhole and I'm going to LARP and I'm going to do all of
Land
this
invasions.
like or not even that. It's like people will say, "Oh, this is how stuff was used historically in the real world, so this
Right,
is how
right.
it is going to work in Foxhole."
Right.
Not that is not true. However, if you have like a certain mindset of like, okay, here are the way that the game is played. Here's our opportunity. Here's what the enemy is aware of. Here's what they know. All that, like, you can generally, like, pretty reliably. Iron Warrior just I didn't want to comment, but he's fucking it's funny. No, it's it's generally the case that like Foxhole rewards intelligent like thinking, and especially knowledge sharing. Like the reason that I will I'll go to the central question in just a second here, but
Sure.
I do not think that the warden performance, the poor performance by wardens in Naval in 109 was based on anything other than, or no, sorry, was the majority of the reason why they performed so poorly in 109 is specifically, unironically, skill issue. I do not think, I do not think that there was any other like factor more significant than skill issue. I think that there were other significant factors that led to the degree of losses. However, I think that the numbers would have still been pretty similar if maybe you take off like 10-20% of the losses, and you can maybe like give them a kill or two, or maybe a kill. But the point is that I don't think a lot of wardens have really like decided to give Naval the like, and I don't blame them because they kind of got shafted with their kit. Like, here's the central question: what do you think Naval got right? What do you think it got wrong? Because I've given my brief answer. What do you think?
I think it got wrong by obviously not giving similar kits to both factions. You know, even just the basic line of submarines and destroyers and things like that. Like, I wish all of that would have came out right away instead of halting it a little bit, and now we're waiting for a new update where the wardens are going to get their destroyer and collies are going to get their submarines.
Actually, they're getting a what is it?
The frigate, or no, what was it called? Yeah. That's what it was. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's where it went wrong right away and everything. And I think I've always considered it since it came out. Right now, it's more of just still testing, right? I'm considering it still just more testing on what works, what doesn't work. Like, it's still in its sort of beta, stages of testing. Because I think, if you were to take a whole faction and have that faction just almost not focus on Navy at all, that they would win wars easier right now. Like, if you just said, hey, let's not do any Navy and just focus on land, and like,
So
why do we need the islands?
So
There's
you
no
think-
significance over there.
You think Naval isn't impactful enough right now? Okay.
In some ways, I think this last war it was just the way the hexes, the way the start was when we sliced it down, the diagonal or whatever.
Okay.
I think you saw a lot more opportunities for, like I was in a battle in Tyne a lot where a destroyer came in and like was raining
mean a battleship?
down on the townhouse,
Oh,
and that was
Tyne,
really impactful.
Tyne, right?
Yeah,
Were,
in
so
Tyne, yeah.
were you warden last war then?
No, I was. Or wait, was I? No, I was a colleague.
Oh, okay. You mean a friendly destroyer then? Okay.
And I mean, War 110. Yeah, War 110, we were in Tyne. A destroyer came up that river or whatever, and then there was no out up there. They just literally came up that one river and then rained artillery down on the townhouse while the infantry and the tanks were pushing up, and that was super beneficial. That was one of the first moments I'm like, okay, Navy is working in tandem with land and everything, and that's how I want to see it. Now, when I see all these battles of battleships and gunboats out in the water, like way off in the fingers or whatever, it's like none of that matters right now. Like, you're just LARPing in the fingers. Like, who cares, right?
So I would say this. I don't actually have a strong. I feel like Naval is impactful, but not as impactful as it almost should be.
I feel like it can be. Yeah, it can
But
be
not.
impactful.
I don't think "can" is the word that we should use because can sort of implies that like. Because
it's not happening.
Well, no, can't. Well, no, I was gonna say because the can isn't the interesting question. The interesting question I think is should it, right? Is it
should it be impactful? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. Should Naval be impactful
Absolutely.
or more impactful than it is? Okay, because some people have given a lot of different answers, and here is something that has bugged the actual fuck out of me to an absurd extent where I hate these people on a fundamental level. I don't know what your opinion on it is.
Sure.
This is going to be the contentious thing.
Sure.
Naval dispersion. What do you think of naval dispersion on the battleships and such?
I don't think I've seen it enough. You sent this question to me beforehand, and I thought about it because that's the one that trumped me the most, and I'm just like, I don't think I have enough experience to have seen maybe what you've seen. So if you want to explain Yeah, go ahead and
So
explain your thought process.
I don't want to I don't want to only give my side of this because I don't I try to check my bias,
Sure.
but I'm undoubtedly biased in favor of the battleships in this equation because I primarily use battleships and I don't primarily build bunkers, right? But if you do you remember I brought up the War 109, was it War 109 video where you were rebuilding that conch core and then it immediately evaporated?
Yeah, I think that was 109. Yep.
So, do you remember the dispersion on that?
I mean, I don't remember it being very wide. If that's what you're talking about.
It's
it was
not
very
wide.
accurate.
I think, yeah, that's...
You think it is? You think it is wide?
No. I'm
Okay.
saying it's not. I'm saying you
it's not.
saw how accurate they are.
Yes,
correct?
deadly
So,
accurate.
do you think there is a problem with battleship accuracy? Because some complete fucking morons, I'm sorry to poison the well like this, have said, and to be clear, you might not be a moron if you think that. Let me immediately walk
Nice
that back. Yeah. No. Do you think it is too much or not?
I think right now, currently, it's in a good spot because I want people to use Navy more in tandem with taking things with land. So I think if you had that dispersion, that people would use it less because there's too much verity or the V word.
Variation.
Yeah, variation. Thank you. If there was too much variation or variance in the shots, I don't think people would use it as much. It wouldn't be worth the cost of sending the ship up, risking it to sink or anything like that if you knew you weren't going to land your shots.
Okay, cool. You have a well thought out perspective that no one on Reddit seems to care about. Because holy fuck,
this argument yet? I haven't. Seen
you haven't? Oh my god,
this.
It's under any. Okay, so there was. I mentioned this briefly. I don't know if you realized that I was referring to myself. Because I'm the guy that organized the. Do you remember the nuke that was killed at Mercy's with the battleship last war?
Yeah. I think I do.
Okay, I literally got. I have an Australian friend. He literally I think I literally offhandedly mentioned, "Hey, wait, you have that battleship? Can we do this?" And then within 3 hours, I had planned and succeeded in killing that nuke within a battleship.
Great. I think that's awesome. That's awesome. That's great.
No, it's. And then the thing is that we...
I mean, it took you 3 hours.
Well, no. That is not a lot of time.
Hey, let's hop in this thing and go.
3 hours is not a lot of time. It's more so...
I know, in the grand scheme of things, it's not, but it still is.
I literally... I saw the nuke, went on Foxhole stats, drew up a plan where I was like, okay, if we pre-aim it, we'll be able to just drive in, blast it and leave, right? And have you seen the video?
No. I'd love to see that video. Though.
I'll link you it after this.
Yeah,
but so to give a synopsis for those listening who aren't watching it, essentially what we did, what I planned was we would drive out into the middle of the ocean with our boat facing at the exact way to pull up into the firing position, and what we would do is we would check about 225 meters away at a specific azimuth. So that we would see, okay, if the spotter looks at this precise coordinate, that would be where we are sitting and where we are firing. So on Foxhole stats, we need to be within 225 meters at 300 azimuth. So if we're out at sea and the spotter looks at those coordinates and the gunner shoots and the shots land on that target, that means that these shots will land at that target when we pull up to the actual firing position. So what we did was we brought up our long hooks, deployed them so the gunboats couldn't QRF us, in order to also wipe the giant freighter blockade that the Wardens had built at there. So all of that dies in seconds. I shoot the. They had also built naval piers, which I shot with the 150 cannon on the front, and then we pre-aim. We dilly-dally around for 2 or 3 minutes of wasted time or so. Then we pre-aim at the thing. That takes about 10-20 seconds to figure out, where I'm specifically calculating it. I'm watching the spotter stream as the main gunner. I specifically shoot. The shots land on target. We drive in. I shoot at the nuke dies, and we pull out. And we didn't lose anything except for some gunboats that drove into the coastal gun. So... So
I mean, I think that sounds great. I think
No,
that
yeah.
was a well planned out operation. I
Now,
think that's great.
the thing is, people use that video as
Uh-huh.
evidence that the battleship is overpowered, when which makes no sense to me, considering
Uh-huh.
if you look at that video, the Wardens have 8 to 9 emplaced artillery, right? Emplaced 150s. Here's the thing: half of those were shooting at the long hook. The other 4 were shooting at us for about 2 minutes, and we took about 5 howitzers of return battery fire in about 2 minutes, right?
So there was plenty of counterfire to you.
Yes.
Plenty of retaliation.
We were only being fired upon for 2 minutes. How much damage do you think we sustained? How flooded do you think we were?
Maybe 20%. I don't know. I don't know how to gauge flooding currently.
Well, not flooding. Like, how many do you think any compartments were flooded? If
maybe
and to what extent?
1 and 20% damage is what I'm guessing.
Okay, that is way off. We were down to 45% HP with the 2 middle compartments flooded, the back one somewhat flooded, but we were able
But
to.
it was just the howitzers that hit you.
No,
They
it
weren't
was
some
it was
150s?
5. It was the 5 howitzers that we were getting
Okay.
return fire by, and 4 150s.
Okay, sorry. I thought it was just the howitzers. Okay.
No,
okay.
those in the span of about 2 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that sounds like a risk, and
The only reason that was successful is because our target was only a nuke, which, keep in mind, if they were repairing it, the repair rate on the nuke is actually absurd. We would not have been able to kill it if they were repairing it. They weren't repairing it, so we just the only reason that worked is because the nuke is squishy. Against actual concrete, if you have people preset with their arty, if you have everything prepped, you can so easily you're never going to kill a battleship without having your own fleet, because the battleship can always just leave. But the problem people have is that people have this really silly notion that they should be able to kill a battleship without having their own boats.
yeah, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, and it is the most frustrating sentiment to see when, insofar as what I look at Naval, I see this realm of things where the actual gameplay, the content is so good. Do you know why? Because I can, and this gets into the skill issue thing that I mentioned earlier. While Wardens have I'd actually argue the Titan is better than the Callahan in terms of battleships. Not for any reason that anyone is going to think. The reason is actually ergonomics. I think the ergonomics of the Titan are slightly better than the Callahan, and I think, and also the Callahan's speed being slightly faster is a pretty big upside. People will say, "Oh, the broadside, oh, the this, the that." It's like, no, it's mostly the ergonomics. Also, the fact of, it is generally easier to, because here's the thing about Battleship Arty, is that you need good gunners, because a good gunner on a battleship can spot themselves. They know how their gun works. They know if they adjust this much by this much, they know where their shots are going to land when they adjust, right? And so you need more good gunners to crew the Warden battleship, and it has slightly worse ergonomics, and it has there's a lot of little small things that make it worse, but it's not a bad ship. They're both really strong, right? But the Wardens kind of got shafted on the big ships, right? Their gunboat though is also stronger, but they only have the bone saw slash. They have the mounted bone saw and the dual RPG launcher, right? We have the Typhon. The point is, Naval's kind of fucking weird, where it's their gunboat is better, significantly better. But ours has the better armament. But also, when they get the frigate, they're going to have the ability to throw ATRs on that thing constantly.
Yeah. This is my point earlier, where I think Navy is still in a beta testing phase. That no, I don't think anyone is using it as optimized as all of it could be optimized.
So that's true, but I think if you look, I 100% think that. However, there's one major component. This is the skill component of Naval, right? Information. So many people want to act like there is just no, battleships just suddenly materialize next to enemy concrete and then suddenly disappear in seconds. No, a battleship is really fucking slow, actually.
Yeah.
And it can die by a single bridge. And you can spot it with an intel kit on any bridge because there are so many fucking bridges and choke points that you have to deal with, right? Like, little hint, you might not want to, or you might want to check that your singular exit from your ports isn't intel tapped when you do this every single day, because last war, when Fingers had to, like, defend, we knew every single goddamn time they brought out a large ship because their shit was constantly tapped, so we would always see the big ships pulling out of port and know, okay, time to fucking prep, right? Like,
yeah.
And then like when we'd bring out a battleship for that, even though it only took like 2 to 3 hours of planning, I called up every single like vet friend I know. I called up Rhodes of Raid to go do forward spotting on Endless Shore to make sure that enemy gunboats or subs or whatever weren't coming to kill us. I got several vets I know, like driving the long hooks or driving gunboats like as our escort. Like, there is like, and I was personally out there in a gunboat like an hour before we even got there, just like scouting it out, like looking. Oh, the enemy has active gunboat patrols, so we're gonna need to like deal with that. Oh, the enemy like has this giant freighter wall, and they have a single entrance through it, and all these naval piers. When we showed up, we specifically showed up right when one of their like outer gunboats had went in, so we just deployed the long hooks. Everything died in seconds. It's just a matter of, like, if you want to be successful at Naval, you just need intel. If you play the intel game better, that, like, Naval isn't so much just Naval. Naval is intel into prep, into, like, actually, it's prep into Naval. Like, do you have gunboat QRF prepped at all times? Is it loaded? Is it fueled? Is it, like, fully repaired? How many do you have, like, loaded? Do you have the ability to, like get more reloaded and ready really quickly? Like, do you have public stockpiles of mortar shells? Do you have nearby encampments to pull shells? Do you have trucks loaded? Do you have like pallets of tripod weapons? Do you have fuel containers on like piers? Do you have like and then after all of that, are you monitoring the waters? Are you making sure that you're not going through friendly like intel that could be tapped when you're going to like do your naval invading? Like, there is so much more than people want to actually think about with Naval that they just don't care about. And it's infuriating to have people have all of these hot takes about Naval when they don't actually care about learning it. They just want, like, when people say they want battleships dispersion, right? That would be the biggest, like, not only would it be a massive nerf, because, like, concrete would be functionally untouchable for what I hope you get why that, yeah?
Yep.
Why? Say for the audience.
Well, what we talked about earlier is what you're getting at, right?
Say, yes? What did we talk about earlier?
Not hitting the conch? Is that what you're getting
at? No, the howitzers!
Oh, the howitzers.
Howitzers.
Yes, the howitzers.
You'd hit literally every single howitzer if they had actual dispersion. And if you think, like, you can literally get like all your shit flooded in like seconds with just like 5 or 6 howitzers. If you have like even Exalt dispersion, which is pretty good, or even SPG dispersion, which is even better, if you have that on a battleship, you're hitting like 10 to 12 to 20 howitzers and you are going to melt. Like, you cannot shoot at concrete if you have bad dispersion, or you can, but you need to shoot way off to the side, thus having your DPS and all that. And it's like, people will say like, oh, well, that's a good thing, battleships. It's like, bro, are you aware that most battleships have been completely wasted? How much damage has actually been dealt using battleships? Only good battleships get anything done, and even then, they're not as good as like railway storm cannons or ballista rushes or all the other late game stuff, or SPGs, right? Like,
right.
Like, there's so much that they could do, like, to the islands. Like, actually, did you notice this war, what they did to Planafada?
This current war? No,
yeah.
I have not seen that.
Go, just look at your map. Look at Planafada.
Right.
Do you see it?
I think so.
What's on Planafada? It's kind of funny.
Okay, I don't see it.
Resource nodes? Resource nodes.
Oh, okay.
The double oil?
Okay.
Yeah. They made
Okay.
well, they made an island worthwhile. It's just completely not worthwhile because it can't be defended at all.
Oh, I see. I see. I see. Okay.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
there's more that they could do to make to make isle like I when you say make islands worthwhile, I don't even know if islands are the issue with naval. I think the issue with naval is landings aren't really that good because you have to you don't have to have the ideal landing is you show up with your battleship, pound the shit out of it, leave, come back the next day and wipe it again in seconds and then land, right? Like you don't go to a full conch base and try to land and think you're going to be successful, right? Because at that point, all of the fucking mob spawners are spooled up. They're just spewing out all their tanks. You're fucked by that point, right? The issue with landings right now is just that there's not enough pressure that you can actually put on, even if you get the element of surprise.
Right. Right. Which I've been in a couple, and I completely agree. So yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Do you think do you have any specific thoughts about what should be done with naval? Because aside from the Corvette and Colonial sub that we're getting next update. Did I say
question.
Corvette? I meant frigate. Fuck.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna probably keep calling it that for a while.
Yeah.
I don't know. My general thought is I want to see just more testing. I think it's going to be a couple wars before we really see how we can use these to the best of their abilities, cuz it's like submarines right now, right? Like I feel like submarines have been still very underutilized. They just don't I haven't seen any significant damage. I would like them to be some sort of stealth sniping, asset that they come in real quick, snipe, get out.
Here's what I will say on subs specifically. I have seen them be useful, but
Okay.
I think subs are really bad. The only time I've seen them useful is by using the torpedo stacking thing that CAF did, where they torpedo stacked, and then they went and then they killed dry docks with them and killed our battleship in 109. That's the most use I've ever seen.
That's what it should be, I feel like, but in more frequently, right?
Okay. Part of the problem with that is that sounds fucking miserable. Keep in mind.
I mean, yeah, that's part of it. But
what
that's
you're
why
asking
you have all
for.
those defenses. You have the sea mines and all of that, right?
All of the sea mines are just sea mines, for reference. You don't have anything else. But and to counteract sea mines, all you have to do is get a single decoy sub that you close the front compartment and just ram all the mines and then have it leave.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
There's a lot of stupid shit with subs, but it's also the fact that they're just complete dog shit in PvP, right? If you
And just to answer a little bit more of your question too, is just I personally want to see them work together more with land and things and attacks like that. You have a battleship off to the side that's raining down artillery while infantry and tanks are pushing up and they're working together. I love that. I loved seeing that in Tyne. Again, it was my favorite time to see a destroyer, essentially.
Yeah, there was because the one landing I saw that we did and supported in 109, it was right after Battleships Unlocked. We did it at Lividus in Morgan's, and it was very fun because that was my first time on the battleship gunning seat. I'd already practiced in the destroyer, first time on the battleship. That shit felt like a return to do you remember? No, you don't remember. Fuck. Back in the day.
Yes, teach me.
So before when you started playing, Winter Army had already that was the introduction of wind, right? There used to be no wind, so you'd just know, right? At all times. But even beyond that, actually no, you there is something that would be, mortar houses.
Mortar houses. Yeah.
That's what Battleship already feels like if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, okay.
If you have a stream pulled up, you can unironically just feel like you're doing that, but with a gun, with a much bigger gun.
Yep.
And doing that, we killed, I think, 10 mediums, Chieftains, Silverhands, Outlaws, all, HTTs, all that shit. We also killed a battle tank using a battleship, which was very fun. And in Fingers, they killed 2 SPGs using a battleship, because they went to Reaver's Pass, because Reaver's Pass had 2 SPGs, and
I mean,
really,
I think that should
yeah.
totally be the case, right? Don't you? That like the
No,
ship
yeah,
should be
yeah.
able to kill those.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I find it very enjoyable.
You-
You're talking to the naval lover, like
yes,
in
yes,
chief,
true.
right? Like,
Yes, yes.
I
I'm
love.
reinforcing your bias. You know,
Okay,
as somebody that hasn't played Navy as much as you have, I'm agreeing with
okay.
you, right? Like I'm
Yeah, no,
coming
no,
from an
yeah.
unknown stance and being like,
All
yeah,
I'm
that
saying
should
is
happen.
that, like, after the disaster that was Update 52, removing Satchel and plunging Foxhole into the Dark Ages, they must have had to spend so fucking long testing to make sure that this shit got right. Like, there's no way they just, like, got this right the first time. They had to have, like... Because if you remember old gunboats, that shit had wild dispersion. There's no way they didn't, like... They must have tried this with dispersion and without it dispersion, and then just come to the conclusion that without dispersion was better. Like, there's no way.
Right.
There's no way they didn't try it without dispersion, and then like, actually, that's coupled with the integrity nerf, right? Like, why do you think integrity was nerfed? Was it well? It could have been just because like devs wanted Arty to be better or to be better against bunkers, but we already see how much damage howitzers can do against like battleships, like
Exactly. Right.
like,
Right.
There's no way that shit wasn't also a product of the battleship, like just being added, right? Like, just imagine if it was even stronger against battleships. Like, currently, yes, you can kill concrete with it, but it is literally one of the most expensive things in the entire game. At the very end of the tech tree, why should it not kill concrete?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
That's what I mean. Where people get this weird idea that any way that their perfectly designed base dies is just imbalanced, and it's I hate that mentality. Because okay, let me ask you: Do you build it? Do you build it all? Because you're mostly Logi, right?
Yep. So I'm with you, and I haven't built a ton. I watch Cronus build all the time and all that. So that's where I get my building knowledge from. Is Cronus Winter mainly.
Oh, that's funny for reasons. Don't spite. No, but they're better builders. Anyway,
Sure they are. This is the one I can watch at work. Okay.
Okay, fair enough. No, but I think it's just a weird sentiment that people will get into where it's like, for me personally, have you ever played Factorio? This is what I mean. This is what welcome to the latter half of Trench Talk, where we just start talking about random shit.
That's fine. I'm for it. Let's do it.
You've played Factorio?
Yes, I have. Yep.
How much have you like beat the game?
About 120 hours. I got to the end of the game.
So you like?
I haven't done any crazy modding or anything like that.
So basically, like you beat the game and then that was good enough for you, kind of thing.
Yeah, and then I got Foxhole. Honestly, I got Factorio like a month or two before Foxhole, and then I got Foxhole, and I've never.
Hey,
left
you know what?
Foxhole.
You know what? I can vibe with it. I think my constant pestering for better like Factorio like Logi is what led to Facilities, unironically.
Yeah.
And what a disaster that was. No, they've gotta rework them. I'm praying. I'm like, honest to God, maybe I'm on some high tier copium, but I feel like it's gonna be this update that they finally decide to do something with them.
I'm on the same cope train. I am.
Yeah. No, I bring up Factorio because my ideal building has less to do with permanence and building this perfectly sculpted sculpture. To me, building should be all about building and rebuilding, and how can I design the most effective defense that is not just designed to never crack, but is designed to be able to account for those cracks and rebuild, right? That's like, that is my ideal building system, because have you ever heard of, there's a Factorio game mode called Biter Battles, which is basically like, it's like one of those Minecraft mods where you'd basically send enemies to attack your opponent, and it's like an indirect PvP kind of thing.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and so you have to build your base and upgrade through the tech tree of the normal Factorio gameplay towards getting towards like a rocket, right? And the higher tier, you'd use basically science packs to send enemies to attack your opponent, right?
Okay.
So so you basically have to balance. Okay, how much am I putting towards attacking my enemy versus defending against enemy attacks? And there's like all these like stuff. But the way you actually like fight back is you just have to be really goddamn fast, right? It's not about making the perfect builds. It's just about building decent builds really quickly. And I think that's a lot more fun than just like sitting back for 20 hours before building your first blueprint.
No,
but
I agree.
yeah.
I want the quality of life for builders. I really do.
I would love it if building was so much fucking quicker in the late game, but you
I
couldn't.
agree.
But
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
but concrete was like locked behind like half track tier tech.
Okay.
That would be my like counter offer. You lose your early game concrete, but you don't have to actually unlock it in the end game.
I think that's fair.
Oh,
I think that would solve an issue that you had earlier about how slow moving it is. You know.
And as an extra, concrete would also settle slower because you're getting it you're getting it immediately, so you shouldn't be able to instantly get to like wait 24 hours. It should be like 2 days. But like,
okay, I don't know if I agree with that one, but okay.
Oh come on,
I'll follow you.
Well, hey, all the time saved on. You save time not having to go through the tech tree, but that time has to be made up somewhere, right?
I get it. I get where you're going with it. I do.
Yeah.
I don't have the exacts, but I don't. My initial thought was I don't know if I agree.
And you could even make it be the case that like that makes it so that rebuilding is better because bunkers get a tech that makes concrete settle faster, huh? That's the replacement.
Hey, I'm for that.
That way when you have a built-up bunker, the advantage isn't like because any bunker can make concrete, but your bunker gets that extra special fast settling concrete.
Add a new resource into the game that kind of helps develop that.
Not another resource. Right? Oh no. God.
I love tons of resources. I do.
No. All right. Yeah, I think that about covers war length and naval. I mean, we could probably talk more on those, but I feel like that's good enough for tonight. Actually, how long has it been? Because I've been periodically checking, but I don't remember when we started. So.
I haven't checked either. I've been counting the days and nights in the Foxhole game.
Okay, because I was about to say I remember we started at like between like midday and night.
Yeah,
and now it is
I want to say close to an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah, I'm gonna call it here just before this file gets like way too fucking big. But shut yourself out. I'll throw your links in the description if anyone wants to see more stuff from Rob. Otherwise, thank you for watching Foxhole Trench Talk with me, your host Lek, and with Rob here. Actually, do you have anything? Actually, shut yourself out and say anything you want to say.
Robertlovesgames on YouTube. I do a kind of wide variety of Foxhole topics. I do battles, and I touch on a lot of topics. I do a lot of discussion-based stuff, too. I kind of get a pulse for what the Foxhole community is like feeling, and then I kind of talk about it. Like, you'll see me talk about current exploits and things like that, and like, is this good for the game? Is this not good for the game? And I'm always just trying to, my goal is just to try and stay as neutral as possible with a lot of topics. I don't like to be overly biased. Like I want to have all the information possible, just so I'm making like informed decisions about what I think should be changed in the game. And I like to have fun in this game. I don't personally get too into the weeds with like meta and like I don't get into like what the health of a bunker is or the health of a battleship or the damage of an artillery shell. Like I'm like...
You're more about feels than reels.
Kinda. Yeah, people hate to hear it, but, I LARP a little bit in this game.
Hey,
the immersion of it.
Hey, I'm LARP Master General, okay? But my LARP is killing concrete, okay?
Yeah, there you go. I love it. So, yeah, just Robert Loves Games, come check me out, whatever. But, yeah, this has been really fun. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, thank you to Doter, again, for being a little shit and pestering me about this. He got me off my ass, so hope you're proud, Doter. All right, take care, everyone. And well, actually, the sign-out line it would be "Stay Foxy," but that's the Foxhole game line. I'm not a dev, so I don't have to say that. What is "Stay Trenchy"? No, that's terrible. Fuck. What is it? What is the outro?
Bear always say, "And keep your heads down and stay in your foxhole."
No. Saying the name of the "Stay Persistent." I'll figure something out,
we'll figure it out.
Just game on, gaming.